Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's the match day bulletin on match night. I'm with Laura Bradburn. We're going to be watching Celtic versus Hearts. And I've got to say, first comment in, Jamie Young, educate us. Reminder button, ACSOM. Tell me, how do we do that? Because I would love to remind everybody that subscribes that we are live. I know that obviously individually you can go in and hit that notification button. But if there is a way to do that, I'd love to know. So let me know. We're learning all the time. Before we run through all the teams, again, I'm going to throw this one out, Laura, because we get a lot of information from the commenters. And I'm asking the question, where is Cameron Carter-Vickers? Now, I wasn't aware that he'd picked up an injury. I understand if Ange wants to rest him because he's played every game since he's come in. But it seems a wee bit unusual, Laura, that he's not even on the bench.
Yeah, I've not heard anything myself about it. I've been having a quick look and couldn't see anything. And especially I heard you and JP talking about him today on the podcast. I've heard people talking about him a lot this week because of the supposed, rumoured £10 million or whatever it is that he would cost us to get him permanently. So he's been at the forefront of Celtic fans' minds. He's been getting a little bit more of the praise that I think he's been short of getting but has deserved. He's been getting that in the last few days. And I don't think anybody, although we're pleased to see Starfelt back in the mix, I don't think anybody was wanting it to be at the expense of Cameron Carter-Vickers. So you're worried on two fronts. One, what has Ange seen that's made him put Starfelt in instead of CCV? And on the other hand, is it because of some kind of injury that we're not aware of, or a suspension? Hopefully, if somebody in the comments knows better than us or has seen some information that they can tell us, then that would be great.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, we kind of thought players like Cameron Carter-Vickers, McGregor, Kyogo, Hart, these are guys that play every single week when fit. And, there comes a point where you need to rest them. We spoke earlier on today, Laura, about a few of the players who might have been rested. But we'll start off with the centre-half position because obviously we have a new partnership in there. What have we seen this season? We've seen Beaton playing alongside Welsh. We've seen Beaton and Starfelt, Welsh and Murray. We've seen Carter-Vickers and Starfelt, Carter-Vickers and Welsh. And tonight we have Starfelt and Welsh. Now, I think that Welsh has really improved over the last dozen games or so. I think that the style of Carter-Vickers, he's a Cameron influence. And Welsh, yes, he's not the finished article yet, but I do think that he has improved and he's impressed. And I'm glad that he's in there. But as you say, if anyone was going to drop out, I wasn't expecting it to be Carter-Vickers. What are we going to expect tonight? What are we going to expect different tonight from that central defensive partnership?
Hopefully, as far as recent performances have gone anyway, I would say I would hope for more of the same despite the change in personnel. We've been scoring a lot of goals recently. We've been playing really well up front. The defence has taken a little bit longer to find its feet, but certainly in recent games has looked a little bit more settled. Yes, you've got Juranovic still playing out of position and things like that, but that centre back pairing and Joe Hart behind him has seemed to settle down, especially with Cameron Carter-Vickers and Stephen Welsh there. So what you're hoping for, as we've talked about a lot about the number of games that we've got coming up in December, is that you can swap like for like and there be no difference. And I would certainly hope that that's the case tonight. Welsh and Starfelt isn't a combination that at the start of the season I would have said would have filled me with a lot of hope, but I'm hoping that with a few more months under their belt and a bit more experience under Ange, that we'll be able to swap players in and out without too much fuss.
We spoke earlier, JP and I spoke earlier, Laura, about the centre-half position and the fact that there is a huge question mark now over the future of Julian. I don't want to dramatise that. I just felt that Ange, when pushed on the subject, was a little bit defensive, pardon the pun. And we've been getting told month on month he's going to be coming back. We've been told 2 international breaks. He'll be back after that. We're moving into December and the fixture list is packed this month and he's not available. And it's a massive concern because it obviously hasn't gone as planned in terms of his recovery.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to point out actually was that I was scrolling through Twitter as I tend to do, and John McGinley, who will be joining us on the charity weekend with 67 Hail Hail, had tweeted something to the effect of, you can't believe the response from some people about Julian. You can't. The guy can't help the fact that he's been injured. He can't help the fact that there's a recovery process. So I think any negative feelings towards Julian as an individual are a bit out of place. But the fact that it's dragging on, it'll be a year this month since he last put on a Celtic shirt. Says a lot. You've got Virgil van Dijk, who got injured, after him, or sort of around about the same period of time as him, and is already back and playing for Liverpool. You've got other players with similar injuries that are doing the same. You just wonder what it is with his specific injury that's holding him back so long. And the fact that Ange even said there is no time frame yet suggests that you're a long way away from seeing him in a Celtic shirt again. And then that brings up the age-old question of, will he be the same player when he comes back as he was before? Because you have to think that something about his game will have changed if he's been out of the game for as long as he has, if in fact we do see him back at any point in the near future. I'm concerned about him. I'm just as an individual player for the rest of his career, even more so than for Celtic. But obviously, from a Celtic point of view, I want him back playing as soon as possible.
I think, there is that whole thing, Laura, where if a player's out of the team, we kind of pine for them. And a lot of the time, you're thinking about a player in higher esteem than what they actually are when they're playing. But with Julian, it was a wee bit different because I think that he had proved both defensively and offensively. I mean, the amount of important goals that he scored for Celtic as well. He was a huge player, and we had missed that. Since he's been injured, we have been leaking goals at the back up until this season, I've got to say, and we didn't have the aerial threat at set pieces that Julian gave us at the other end. Now, I've seen Carter Vickers and Welsh getting on a few corners and crosses, but not a great deal, and they don't have the same threat as Julian. So I do share your concerns. Hopefully it's all about nothing and he comes back and obviously regains his place. But if he doesn't, then how do you think that will affect our plans come January?
Well, I mean, I think defensively we were always going to be short, but obviously I think at the start of the season, and other people at the club would have been hoping Julian would have been back. So perhaps with Starfelt, with Welsh, with Scales, and even going as far back as Dane Murray, you would think we've got enough at centre back to cover us. But Julian still being missing would suggest to me we still need to recruit in January in that area. Even if it's not a dedicated centre back, it's somebody who can play anywhere across the back four to just slot in those places. Because that would still even be a better option than, say, a Beaton or something like that, playing completely out of position at centre back. We can't really afford to let that go on being the kind of de facto second option that we have. We need somebody who's either a specialist in the role, or at least it's one of their preferred positions, because certainly I can't see us going the rest of the season with Cameron Carter-Vickers playing the volume of games that he's already played. Starfelt's coming back from a reasonably serious injury, and Stephen Welsh is still not as experienced as I would like him to be. So you have to be able to rely on a combination of them to get through your matches, especially coming as thick as fast as they are.
I think it's a good point, because you just have to glimpse at the bench tonight. And obviously, if there are any issues, and we hope there are not in the central defensive area, your only option tonight is Beaton. So he's now being regarded on tonight's showing as still being an option at centre half ahead of Scales, and then maybe further down the pecking order, Murray and Urigidi, who are kind of classed as fringe players at this moment in time. So yes, definitely worth the discussion behind them. Joe Hart, a few hearts and mouths at the weekend. Laura, you were at the game. You also spoke to Ange Postecoglou. Talk to us about that experience.
Well, I mean, there was a lot that went into that experience for me, just because it was my first time of ever doing that. I apparently nearly voided numerous legal contracts by getting in front of the BBC to speak to him. That was completely accidental. So I made my apologies and walked further along the track out of the road, because apparently they have rights to speak to him first. But eager me, I was trying to get in there. So, but it was as intimidating and yet enthralling in person as he is on your TV screen. He holds court very well. He's very sort of good orator, much better than I'm being at the moment, and very much doesn't suffer fools gladly. Nobody got the mate treatment, which I'm surprised at, because I heard a few of them getting it in the pre-match press conference for tonight's game. But he was very straightforward with his answers. Specifically, somebody asked him about the penalty incident, and he had no time for getting involved in that either. So had positives to say about the team at every opportunity, but also made sure that his point was being made, whatever his point was at any point, and really, lets the media know what he thinks without being particularly rude about it, I think. But it was a great experience for me, just to tick off the bucket list that I've had a chance to speak to the football manager of Celtic Football Club about football, and one of those situations where I was talking to somebody just yesterday about what I'd done at the weekend and kind of couldn't believe the words that were coming out my mouth. So
it's good. Brilliant. He does have that gravitas, there is no doubt about it. And I think that the question you asked him travelled pretty well, because I've seen it in quite a lot of the news outlets, broadcast and print media. So fair play to you, Laura, and I'm sure there will be other opportunities. But at that game, as I say, one of the biggest concerns was Hart. I mean, we've been saying it for weeks. You get an injury to him, you get an injury to Carter Vickers, McGregor, Kyogo, and we're in trouble. They're so important. That backbone of the team is so important. And when Hart went down like he did, there was a lot of worried faces in the stands, wasn't there?
There really was, because and it's one of those situations where I've very much been an advocate for fans who aren't able to get to the games still being part of the support and that, and I still am. But there's something different about being at the game in a situation like that, because you can't distract yourself from it. You're not able to turn and talk too much to other people, especially if, as in my case, you don't know people sitting around you. You're not able to go and make a cup of tea or anything like that. You're sitting watching every part of the treatment, every part of every movement that he makes. Is it likely that he's going to get up? He got up at one point, he sat back down, and I thought, this really doesn't look good, And then you go through your waves of anger at the Aberdeen player for clattering into him, and you go through your waves of panic looking over at the bench, seeing Scott Bain getting stripped, and it was probably only a few minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. And even after he started moving around, he was doing a lot of jumping up and down in the box, stretching, and obviously trying to get himself, moving properly again. So even for a period of about 10 minutes after he got back up, I would say I was still kind of looking at him thinking he's going to signal to the bench to come off. Thankfully he didn't, and there doesn't seem to be any lasting damage. But like you say, he's one of the few players in the squad where you think if we lose him, we're really going to suffer. And I think you had actually made the point in the pre-match. I was listening to the pre-match while I was sitting at the game, and I think you made that exact point, and we were sitting less than 10 minutes into the game going, this might actually come true, to the point I was going to text you and say, what did you say it out loud for,
I know, because we've done the same with Beaton. We've done the same with Beaton at the beginning of the season. He gets sent off. Some tremendous points coming through, and we will work through them one by one. The whole process that Joe Hart went through to try and get back on his feet and moving, that's what happens when you hit about 40 every morning, Laura. That's the process you need to go through just to get yourself going. Trust me. Sean F., probably the strongest lineup we can put out at the moment, apart from CCV. Has he picked up a knock? See, this is the thing. Often these things happen late in the day, but normally we have confirmation. And like everyone else, we're asking the same questions. Is he suspended or injured? I don't think he's suspended. Paddy Burns comes in. Glasgow's green and white. Good point. Glasgow is Green and White is a podcast who will also be part of our Charity Weekender. We've invited, including ACSOM, there will be 15 Celtic podcasts and broadcasts coming together to raise funds. And the funds this year are going to the birthplace of Celtic Football Club. So they're going to go directly to the parishes of St Mary's and St Alphonsus. in Glasgow because they need the money. It's as simple as that, Laura. They've been hit massively by COVID. You imagine the fact that they require donations, if you like, from their parishioners on a mass-by-mass basis. And for that whole period of time, there were no masses. And I know that obviously priests, technophobes, as they might have been, quickly learned how to broadcast and people were able to tune in that way. But it requires bodies in the chapel for the church to tick along. And we're talking day-to-day running costs, like, just being able to switch the radiators on, Laura. And this is the birthplace of Celtic, and it shouldn't be the situation. It should not be in the situation that it's in. As well as that, they do incredible community work in the communities that, when Celtic were founded in November 1887, were in poverty. There is still poverty in these areas to this day. And I think that it has happened naturally, but year on year, ACSOM will always be raising money for St Mary's and St Alphonsus, and I think that's only right. But incredibly, I nipped away earlier on, Laura, just before starting this, to pick up these tracksuits, which is part of our merchandise range, because we don't want to charge for any content that we do, but we do run a wee line of merchandise, and if you do fancy buying these, they're not on the website yet, but they will be on axom.net. And when I come home, well, I say home, I'm in the studio that much, I'd be as well calling it home. I had a look at the fundraiser, and it's sitting at £3,060, which is astonishing. We're looking to raise £10,000, a lot of money, but some of the donations are, small, large. It's incredible. It's humbling that but should it be surprising when you think about the Celtic fans? Probably not, because they always step up when they're needed. But I'm astonished with the reaction so far. I'm buzzing for this weekend. I'm sure the studio will be a cracking place to be. Laura, you're going to join us.
Yeah, I'll be there on Sunday to help cover the match, hopefully. And I've even got a very special new piece of attire that just arrived today, which I'll be sporting. So, but I'll keep that for Sunday. So if you want to see what that is, check it out. But I went on the donation page earlier today, just as it was about to cross £3,000, and the big thing that shocked me about that was, that wasn't 3,000 people donating £1 each. It was a very small number of contributors, which means people are being very, very generous with their money, and I think that's a fantastic thing to see. Obviously, COVID's been a hard time for communities, and it's been a hard time for everybody watching this. People will be sitting watching who've lost jobs and who've had other financial hardships brought about by the last couple of years in particular, or might just be in a position where unfortunately that is their status quo at the moment. And so anything you're able to give is very much appreciated. It's going to less fortunate people, and I'm sure they'll appreciate it as well. And one thing I would say as well is, please don't feel like you can't get involved even if you're not able to contribute financially. If you're able to share the page, if you're able to get involved in the live stream at some point over the weekend and just help make the atmosphere, the party atmosphere that we're going for to celebrate the end of another year, and another year that we're all still here for, and that kind of thing. Just contributing in any way you can is going to be beneficial for us, whether it's financial or otherwise.
Yeah, I think Lawrence said it brilliantly, where he said St Mary's gave us Celtic. They gave us a gift to Celtic, and we're now giving back. And I think that all year round, even, we could probably do a few events, culminating in the big charity weekend at the end of the year, Laura, just to make sure that they're never short of what they require down at St Mary's. And I am really buzzing for this weekend. David Kelly comes in. That lineup gives me the fear a bit. Don't rate Starfelt at all. And Turnbull is running an empty. Fingers crossed all goes well. Well, let's talk about Turnbull, because earlier on today with JP, we spoke about the fact that he probably needs a rest, Laura.
Yeah, he looked pretty, fatigued against Aberdeen. And sometimes it's not even about him looking fatigued. You just sometimes are watching a match and realise it's a long time since you saw David Turnbull do anything of note, which for him is something that, says everything you need to know about where his physical or mental position is in relation to a game. He did come out and speak to us after the match. Unfortunately, given the way David likes to to speak very quietly and stuff like that, and the fact that I think they were pranking us by cutting the grass in the stadium while we were interviewing him. I didn't get to hear much of what he was saying, but the gist of it was, that he's aware and the team are aware of the large number of games they've got coming up, the difficult nature of the games, and the fact that they are all, they're getting limited amounts of training on the park and stuff like that, and even more limited sort of regenerative rest time and stuff like that. So it's a situation where you hope in January there are players come in that can swap out for people like him and Rogic who don't necessarily tick the boxes in terms of their fitness year in, year out, because at the end of the day it should be a squad game. We should have to use an entire squad to win a title, and I don't think there should be any shame in that. Just unfortunately we're too thin on the ground to be rotating too much at the moment, I think.
Oh yeah, the thing with that middle three, the midfield three of McGregor, Turnbull and Rogic, is I think Turnbull and Rogic have a lot of similarities, and the position that Turnbull's playing, I don't know if that then gives McGregor as much freedom as he would like. The other two options, of course, would have been Beaton coming back from injury and McCarthy. McCarthy might feel a bit hard done by tonight after a decent enough showing against Aberdeen, Laura.
Yeah, one in particular was that pass that one contribution he made. Sorry, was that pass he made for Abada before it rebounded back to Callum McGregor for that goal against Aberdeen. So he's still got those touches of class, McCarthy, that are indicative of a player who managed to have a decade-long career in the Premier League. You're not a bad footballer if you're able to play at that level for the length of time that he did. Just worries me slightly, as we've gone over before, that it's pretty obvious, I think, to anybody who thinks about it for more than a couple of minutes, that he wouldn't have been an Ange signing, just based on the fact that there was a history of him being chased by the club by multiple managers, and it's possibly been a signing by somebody else. You then have to ask the question, with Ange wanting to play the specific brand of football that he wants to play, is McCarthy somebody that he would have picked for that, or somebody that suits that role? Maybe not, but again, like I said before, with the defence and with the midfield, it is a squad game. He's a good enough footballer to provide a role of some description for us, and I think, as you've alluded to in recent weeks, we're going to have to rely on every member of the squad going forward, and I think he's more than capable of doing the job, especially against domestic opponents.
Well, on that point, Laura, I'm bringing up Gerard Hackett, who's watching ACSOM on YouTube, slightly worried about the defence without Cameron Carter-Vickers, but we should have enough elsewhere to get a decent result. I think there's a lot of fans share those concerns, but I actually think it's about time that Starfelt just stood up to the plate. He's a big money signing in terms of a Celtic signing, £4.5 million. He's come in, he's got experience, he's an international player, Laura, and I just think we need to get to that stage where we're not thinking that about Starfelt when he comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I actually felt bad for him at the time that he got injured, because I got a bit of a reputation for giving him a hard time sort of before he got injured, and I actually think he was starting to settle into the team and find his feet a little bit more and calm down a little bit more just when he got injured. So I think if that hadn't come at the time that it did, you might be talking about a different player, but I based on where he was getting to before the injury, I think he's nearly there in terms of being settled enough in the team and used to the way of playing. So I think he will be a good signing for us, and I think we'll see the best of him hopefully in the second half of the season. It might have taken him a little bit of time to settle down, but I think he is getting there now.
Yeah, I hope so. And when we look at the fullbacks situation as well, it doesn't seem to concern us, that we're playing somebody out of position at left back and Tony Ralston, the much maligned Tony Ralston at right back. And I think that just kind of epitomises the strength of Ange Postecoglou and, what he's able to do with players, because he's asking Juranovic to play out of position. And I know that, fullbacks have done it in the past where they've switched over, but you can tell that when the ball comes to his left foot, he doesn't cross it in first time, Laura. He checks himself. Sometimes that's all it takes for the move to lose its momentum. And Tony Ralston, the most improved player in Celtic's squad within the last 12 months, without a shadow of a doubt. And, you know, when you're looking at these two, you're probably thinking, well, you've got the two right backs on the park and you've got the two number 10s on the park in Rogic and Turnbull. Does that cause us any concerns?
Certainly listening to Juranovic in the pre-match press conference yesterday, I was a little bit concerned because he was quite open about the fact that he's not comfortable playing there. He mentioned about obviously not being comfortable on his left foot, but also some of the parts that you don't think about of when he's used to looking over one shoulder when he's tracking back and things, and actually he's having to look over the other shoulder, so that introduces its own problems. I actually thought he was a bit hard done by one of the reporters, because they asked Ange after they'd spoken to Juranovic and said, you know, Juranovic has said his preferred position is the right-hand side. Do you see him playing there in the long-term future? And Ange threw out the word mate and then said something along the lines of, I'll decide where he plays, kind of thing. But actually, when I went and watched Juranovic's bit, he was asked the question of whether he would rather play on the right-hand side, to which he answered yes, which is, you know, not him telling the manager where to play him. He's just answering a question. So it's a bit back and forth as far as that's concerned. But I think he's doing fine. I obviously would rather have him play the right-hand side, but then that poses the question to you of, is Greg Taylor good enough for the left-hand side? So that's a whole other argument. But as for Ralston, I mean, he's a player. The biggest compliment I can pay him is nobody even mentions the fact that he's in the starting lineup anymore. When you used to see him before, it used to be, oh, what's happened that we've ended up having to play Anthony Ralston? Now he's just the right back that we've got in for the game, and I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay him. He's no longer seen as the weak link. He's no longer seen as an indication of the club being in some sort of disrepair. So, you know, long may it continue for him. I'm happy to see him in the position that he's in, and he deserves it, considering some of the performances and some of the attitudes we had to put up with last season. It's refreshing to see somebody who maybe doesn't have the highest level of talent on the pitch come in and actually make good of the talent that he has through sheer hard work. Yeah,
it's great to see actually when a footballer maximises what they've got, Laura. There's so many talented players out there who don't do that, and what we've got in Tony Ralston is someone who is committed. He's now an international footballer, and he's on the longest stretch of consecutive games in his senior football history. In front of him, of course, is Jamesy Forrest coming back into the side. That's the right decision, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Ange said in the press conference that you're not going to see James Forrest play every game this season or anything like it, considering the interruption to his football that he had last season. But I think we can all agree that any amount of football James Forrest plays for us this season, we're going to be the better for it, because he's just so dangerous, so enthusiastic, so you know, like skillful with the ball. And I think actually, you know, I used to give myself a hard time saying I didn't appreciate what he had done in the past, but I actually think in the last few years he's become an even better player than he used to be. I think he used to make a lot of very like simple errors where he would just get the head down and run to the byline and there would be no end product to it. He's completely sorted that out. He's always got an end product to his game, and he's added much more or loads more goals to his game than he ever used to have as well. He's certainly a goal threat coming in from the right-hand side, and when we've seen him coming in from the left-hand side when he's had to play there occasionally. So I think the team's always the better for him being in it, and I hope to see him in the team more regularly as time goes on.
He's heading towards 100 goals and 100 assists for Celtic. Incredible. 30 years of age now, Jamesy Forrest. On the other side, Jota. It's not all about the twists and the turns down the left-hand side. He's got a finish. He's got an end product as well, Laura, as he showed against Aberdeen.
Well, I couldn't remember when he actually signed for us, so I couldn't remember, because the only other game I've been at this season was the Jablonec Champions League qualifier, so I couldn't actually remember if he even started that game for us, but I watched him for the first time, really, that I can remember in the flesh against Aberdeen on Sunday, and do you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of, in a funny way, Di Canio, in that just the crowd completely lifts when he gets on the ball. You're waiting to see what he's going to do next. You're waiting to see how he's going to beat a player and how he's going to deliver the ball in. and he's been absolutely fantastic for us so far. 6 million, 7 million, 10 million, it is small change to me for a player like that, and I really hope we do everything we can to secure his future.
Absolutely agree with that. Let's hope that Kyogo gets that kind of service that we would expect from the wizard that is Tommy Rogic. We're about to kick off, and obviously Craig Gordon excel in the Hearts goal. And let's hope that when we rejoin the ACSOM Bulletin at halftime, Laura, we will be talking about a free-flowing, never boring, high-scoring, is it? Glasgow Celtic.
I'm not the one to ask
scoring.
you. You'll need to ask my pal on a Friday. I don't know what it is.
I will be speaking to Tony tomorrow. So there we are. We'll get back to the action. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the chat. You've also highlighted a couple of people that need booted out the chat, so we've done that as well. Thanks very much for keeping us informed, and thank you to Laura Bradburn for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.